Forgive me, I'm not a swords person, okay? So this is going to be really rudimentary on my behalf.
That's okay.
Alright, hey, it's Oscar here with the Fateful Force. Today we've got a sort of mini test from me again about warhammers. You might be familiar with this one from the Lamello and Brigadier tests we've done. And I want to make a video sort of addressing my personal beliefs about how something like this actually works. Why is it so good against people in armour when you may have seen from that video me wailing on armour and not really getting through, and yet this is always touted as being the perfect anti-armour weapon.
And I think that the sport of HMB or bow hurt gives us some context into this phenomenon where you're not always going to get dropped by these really heavy strikes of transference of the weapons through the armour itself. However, of course, if you get hit hard enough, anything can happen when you're swinging these great big lumps of metal.
And I really want to address some ideas about why I think that is, and I think that comes down to the fact that I use this almost identically to how I use a sword. What does that mean? Well, when I use a sword, I really like getting long, I like getting as far into my opponent as I can get.
And we do see a little bit of this technique usage in Dequidum's videos where they do use a similar hammer, and we can see they use it in much the same way that they would use a two-handed sword.
And there are certain mechanics at play that I'm going to have Stavros join me for, and we'll walk through them, and you'll actually see when I move to a hammer like this where specifically I'm hitting and what that might mean for the person I'm fighting, even if they are clad head to toe in the best armour money can buy. So we'll move to that now, and then we'll get to see what I do to the ballistic dummy. So I want to go through and do a bit of reasoning for why I'm going to do a test just with a piece of suede over the ballistics gel, and it comes down to a philosophy that I have when I'm training and at the school that I'm at. That comes down to, even if it's a warhammer or a sword or virtually any weapon that you can hold and swing, the mechanics behind them are all identical. And so this is something that I came into when I was first playing with the warhammer, and I'll show you with swords first so you can get an idea. Forgive me, I'm not a swords person, okay? So this is going to be really rudimentary on my behalf.
That's okay.
Right,
okay. To bring some up just by your ears.
So,
now if you come down to swing at me, yeah, perfect. Bring those arms up so you get this nice long extension. Perfect. You're hitting it from almost as far away as you possibly can. That's great. The only way I can stop this, because you're attacking right down the centre, is that when you come in, I'm going to take this strong part of the sword which got hit with leverage, and as you come in, I'm putting that in the centre. Right? From there, I can roll my sword all the way through, and I've got a line that I can attach to, and that's great. Right? That's really good, it's effective. And I'd love to say that I could do something similar with a hammer. If Stavros were not a very good fighter, I would love
which
to
I'm not.
Well, as a fighter, you're pretty good. With a sword.
With the sword, I'm not.
Yeah. I'd love to be able to get close enough here to actually get some sort of hit in there on the neck where those are those really nice juicy targets that I can get through. But if Stavros is going to swing that maximum extension, yeah, go for it. Bring those hands up, almost there, perfect, yeah. I'm not getting there. I can't possibly hope to reach someone, whether this is a sword, a spear, an axe, whatever it may be. But if I do just what I did with the sword, and I take this down where it's near my hands, it's got lots of leverage, I extend it forwards, and then I let that point roll through. So if I come in here, and I've got this piece here.
And remember, the context Oscar is trying to present isn't in an armoured setting, so the lack of a crossguard on the hammer would be counterbalanced by the presence of gauntlets.
Where I'm strong, I've got this huge leverage here. As I go to drop that point, it's dropping pretty much on Stavros' wrist here. I'm dropping this meat right here on this back part of the hand, but I'm in a position where if I just rotate this point, I just flip it, that's equally going to drop either thereabouts on the hand or just past them, and I get some options to start grappling. Awesome, love it. But what's really important is when we're hitting this part of the hand here, we're hitting somewhere that even if you're fully armoured,
has to be just leather. You need that flexibility in a wrist, you need to be able to move it.
Leather and metal coverage can vary from gauntlet to gauntlet, of course.
And so, especially if you're dropping the spike, if you're dropping that metered area, I want to know what happens when this is a tool that, again, doesn't go through armor, but finds really easy ways around it.
And again, bear in mind, the ballistic gel we are using is highly resilient. We showed that kind of with the 16th century dagger hammer, that it bounces, but even though it bounces, it definitely is opening up the gel. On observation, it looks like it doesn't penetrate, but it does. That's a bounce, but we can see here, it does open up the gel. But if you were to do that against a real flesh target, it'll just go straight through.
Yeah, and of course, I'm not going to kill someone with a hit
No,
to
we're
the
not,
wrist,
yeah.
but that's what they need to use to hit me.
To disarm them or something.
That's enough to hit the wrist, stop them attacking back. Then you can go to the grappling, then you can get them on the ground, and then we can see what some of these big sort of final coup de grace or sort of mercy blows would do. When we put a little bit of excessive force behind them.
And again, when we see Dequidum's videos and similar types of weapons, we see this kind of combination of usage of the weapons where there are these heavy strikes plus these very deliberately targeted strikes to these weak areas of an armored opponent.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
All right,
perfect.
go.
Let's get to it. Now I've got here a section of suede leather, and obviously this is a torso and this is a shoulder. I'm going to ask for some suspension of disbelief, and imagine this spike's landing about here on a hand that is covered with leather, and from your sort of view, a hand probably gripping a weapon and dropping it out there. So it'll still be reasonably stiff, and that point's just going to drop straight down. And okay, this is quite interesting. Yeah, I'll get pretty close here. The leather almost helped me get penetration because it really helped that point stick. And if we look underneath, so that leather is probably making the gel stick a little bit more. Obviously this is hide, so it might be a little bit more analogous to skin now with a bit more grip and a bit more texture. Oh, we can see, and I take this one back out, we're talking, 2.5 inches of penetration, 2 inches of penetration. Nasty, and of course for a wrist that's however thick, I'll go again. This time I'll show something a little bit more similar. I'm starting here, I'm getting stuck, and then I'm having to hew with the wind to get that point in. So I'm there, and I'm having to wind that point in, and now we've gotten a very, very similar result. And that's right through the leather. And now I want to do a slightly more realistic situation, because I'm at war, I might not have a hammer this long, and I might actually have, alongside the hammer, to help me protect myself, a buckler. And that's really, a buckler is great for taking that first parry out. And once I've got this open line, I've got one hand with the hammer and I can do whatever I please. So maybe I'm opening with the buckler and then dropping with the hammer, which has gone in, but then skipped. So we got 5-10 mil penetration on the leather. Of course, we've mentioned this often on the channel. This is a gel with a much higher gel concentration than we would expect.
That's a bounce, but we can see here.
NATO round gel, so it's usually for military applications. They're talking about very high speed projectiles that this gel is usually tested with. So it's a lot stiffer than regular flesh. Having said that, even at 2 or 3 mils worth of spike digging into my palm or wrist, I'd be in a very bad spot from that point onwards. Very consistently, the best way to defeat armor is not by trying to hit your way through it. And we saw that again in our test, me and Stavros, on the Lamellar and on the Brigandine. It's about finding a way around it. And whether that means getting up close with a dagger and getting into those small gaps, or whether that means that there are certain ways of using a hammer that allow you to fast track into very weak, soft spots on the armor, potentially to really great effect. I don't think this is a tool that was so great because it was heavy and smashing in plate.
And again, I think it's important that we provide some broader context. Heavy blows don't go through armor. These weapons don't typically penetrate armor. But of course, if you hit someone hard enough, especially if, they've got their backs turned to you, or you hit them blindside them or something like that, you definitely can drop someone in full heavy plate armor.
I think it came down to where's the easiest and most convenient spot to hit.
And I think something we can all agree on is getting hit in precisely the right place can sometimes be more devastating than getting hit really, really hard.
And even on a fully armored person with full gauntlets, that palm of the hand with the spike coming in, you could be ending the fight in just 1 or 2 strokes. And that's really where I think this type of weapon shined. Alright, that concludes this mini test of the hammer on the gel. And obviously, key takeaway, easiest way through armor is always going to be around it. But you know, if I had my choice between something like this or something like this for fighting someone in armor, it's hard to say no to this. I can't necessarily get around armor as easily with this as I can with this. It's a good tool for the job, cheaper, easier, and the weight defeats armor is possibly not what we've been led to believe.
Although again, if you get hit hard enough in the right place, that could do the job as well, even though the weapons don't penetrate the plate itself.
So, look, thanks for joining us, and yeah, stick around for the next test. We've got more fun stuff cooking, and ask away in the comments. We're both normally lingering down there, so we'll do our best to answer and interact with you guys. Awesome.